They called me in at 2:15 p.m. No warning, no calendar invite. Just a knock on my cubicle wall and a clipped, "HR needs to see you." For a moment, I thought it was my annual performance review. After all, my 21-year work anniversary was today. I even wore navy, the same blazer I'd worn the day I got promoted to senior compliance officer a decade ago. Mitchell was already seated in the room when I walked in. He didn't smile. His hands were folded, elbows on the table, like he was preparing for a deposition. Across from him sat Hannah from HR, eyes fixed on a folder she hadn't opened yet. "Grace," Mitchell began, voice devoid of warmth. "This isn't easy, but the company's entering a phase of lean restructuring. Your benefits package is, well, too expensive to keep on the books." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" He looked straight at me then, and delivered the sentence that would sit with me for months. "Your insurance costs the company $720 a month. That's not sustainable." I waited for the punchline. It never came. No mention of my spotless record. No acknowledgement of the fact that I'd been with Olamed longer than anyone else on the floor. Just numbers. Just a folder being slid across the table and a standard severance offer. 2 weeks' pay and an NDA. It didn't hit me until I walked back to my desk that I hadn't even been asked to train my replacement. They didn't need one. My responsibilities would be reassigned, translated, divided up between junior hires at half the pay, none of whom had ever reviewed a regulatory audit in their lives. I packed my things in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just placed my coffee mug, compliance queen, into the box and tried to breathe through the static in my chest. And then my phone buzzed. A company-wide automated email. "Congratulations to Grace Thompson on 21 incredible years with Olamed Solutions. We thank her for her dedication, passion, and integrity." I stared at the screen until the text blurred. Then I hit delete. As I walked toward the elevator, I passed Jason, the new guy in data ops. Just last week, I'd covered for a massive compliance error he made. He got a promotion. "You still here?" he asked, grinning. I didn't answer. They kept him for the energy. They said, "Fresh blood," Mitchell called it, apparently. Integrity was too expensive. I had 30 minutes to disappear. That's what Hannah from HR said. Like it was standard. Like erasing 2 decades of service could be slotted between lunch and the afternoon staff meeting. She handed me a cardboard box, avoided eye contact, and mumbled something about IT deactivating my credentials. Shortly, I walked back to my desk like a ghost. No one asked what happened. They all knew, or worse, pretended not to. The office was suddenly foreign. My name was still on the glass wall outside compliance, but it felt ornamental, like a placeholder no one ever bothered to peel off. The printer still whirred with reports I'd coded. My chair still had the lumbar support pad I'd brought from home. But already, it felt like I didn't belong. I began packing, my framed photo of my son at his graduation. The plant I kept alive with stubborn loyalty, even when I couldn't do the same for myself. The mug they gave me at the 15-year mark, still here, still kicking. The irony burned. People passed my desk, but no one stopped, not even Linda, who used to eat lunch with me every Tuesday. She glanced over, eyes wide, then walked faster. I understood. Guilt travels faster than sympathy in corporate hallways. I took a final look around before heading to the elevator. The moment I stepped in, I heard it. A soft beep. Then silence. I tried to swipe my badge again. Nothing. The elevator didn't respond. I had to ask someone walking by to press the ground floor button for me. They did so without a word, like I was already forgotten, already irrelevant. By the time the doors closed, the grief came in waves, hot, nauseating, thick in my throat. I blinked furiously. I would not cry in that elevator. I would not give them that. Downstairs. I sat on a bench near the lobby to compose myself. The marble floors and corporate art displays looked exactly the same. And yet, everything felt warped, detached, like I was looking at it all from the wrong side of a glass wall. That's when I noticed it, tucked between a stack of folders at the bottom of my box. It was a printed email. I didn't recognize it at first. It wasn't addressed to me. But when I unfolded it, I saw the header. To M. Spencer, CEO. From D. Lawson, Legal. Subject: Compliance Review. Flagged risk attachment. Internal policy deviation flagged by G. Thompson. The message was short, but it hit like a slap. Her warning puts us at risk. Get her out before this escalates. M. Mitchell. My breath caught. This wasn't about $720 a month. This wasn't about budget cuts or lean teams or restructuring. They got rid of me because I saw something they didn't want seen. Because I said something. They hadn't just removed me from the payroll. They deleted me from the system, from memory, from the narrative. But someone forgot to shred this one sheet of truth. I stared at the words until the edges of the paper blurred. Then I folded it, placed it back into the box, and held it tighter than anything else I carried out of that building. I wasn't just fired, I was erased, and now I had proof. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my phone glowing inches from my face, scrolling through old emails I technically shouldn't have had access to. My company inbox had been shut down, but I had backups. Outdated, clunky, not always synced correctly, but still there, like bones buried in shallow ground. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. At least, that's what I told myself. But deep down, I was hoping to find something, anything, that would prove what I already suspected. This wasn't about a $720 insurance premium. It was about silence, control, and fear. At 3:04 a.m., I found the thread. It was dated 6 weeks before I was let go. The subject line was deceptively dry. Policy update, reimbursements review. The body of the message was brief. Mitchell had replied to an internal proposal to quietly reduce the list of covered medical reimbursements under our employee plan, without notifying employees directly. They would only find out when their claims were denied. His words were sharp, efficient. If we can cut even 8 to 10% off monthly payouts without triggering compliance flags, do it. Fast, quiet. My heart thudded as I kept reading. Below his message was my own reply, the one I'd almost forgotten I sent. I'd flagged the risk of litigation, cited the exact section in the employee protection statutes, and warned that unilateral changes without disclosure could constitute fraudulent concealment. No one ever responded. But clearly, someone had noticed, because above my warning sat the newest message in the thread, forwarded to Mitchell and Legal, marked high priority. Her note is a problem. Get her out before this escalates. I sat up in bed, the blue light from the screen washing over my face. My hand trembled slightly as I opened the attachment at the bottom of the email. A PDF, just a one-pager. Title: Cost-Saving Adjustments, Phase 3. A grid of reimbursement items, mental health services, post-op physical therapy, prescription copay caps, all marked with red X's. Items that hundreds of employees relied on. Items that were being slashed without their knowledge. And at the bottom of the page, in bold letters, confidential, do not circulate outside this thread. It was like a fire had lit behind my ribs. They knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't an oversight. It wasn't budget stress. It was calculated, cold, and deliberate. They exploited the trust of people who dedicated their health, time, and loyalty to this company. And when I spoke up, even gently, they erased me, not because I was wrong, but because I was right. I stared at the words on the screen, rage rising slowly, like a pot about to boil over. All those faces at the office, pretending everything was fine, The empty thank you email. The people who wouldn't look at me on my last day. They didn't know. Or maybe they did. And chose comfort over conscience. Either way, I wasn't going to delete this thread, not this time, by morning. The rage had settled into something sharper, not fury, not grief. Focus. I sat at my kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee from the same chipped mug I'd used every morning before work. My laptop sat open to the email thread. My phone lay face down next to it, the screen smudged from hours of scrolling, and I knew what I had to do. I opened my contacts and searched a name I hadn't thought about in years. Dana Myers. She was a corporate compliance attorney who'd audited Element back in 2017 when a state inspector flagged irregularities in our vendor contracts. Most people hated her. She was blunt, relentless, and surgically intelligent. But I respected her. She didn't flinch, didn't play favorites, and didn't blink. Once, after I delivered a full documentation trail within 24 hours, she told me over lunch, "You're the cleanest operator in a dirty system." I laughed at the time. Now it rang differently. I texted her first. "Dana, it's Grace Thompson. I need to talk. It's about Olamed." 3 minutes later, she replied, "I'll call you in 10. 10 minutes. On the dot. Her voice hadn't changed, still crisp, measured, like every word had been weighed and cleared for airspace. "Tell me what you've got," she said. No greeting, no small talk. I gave her the short version. Termination without warning. The flagged policy change. The thread. The attachment. I tried to keep my voice calm, but the chill in hers made mine steadier. When I mentioned the phrase, "Do not circulate outside this thread," she cut in. "You have that PDF?" "I do." "Don't send it. Not yet. Meet me today, 3 o'clock, my office." I almost forgot to breathe. "That soon?" She didn't pause. "Grace, you don't realize what you're holding. It's time." Her office was in a converted brownstone in the legal district, 2 stories, no signage, high ceilings and hardwood floors that creaked when you walked too quickly. It didn't look like a war room, but it was. Dana stood at a wide oak table covered in folders, tablets, and 2 laptops. She waved me in without looking up. "Coffee's on the right. Sit." I did. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder labeled OSI, Internal Exposure. I raised an eyebrow. "OSI?" "Olamed Solutions, Inc., she said, flipping it open. "I've been building this for 2 years. I stared. "Why?" "Because," she said calmly. "They've been skating the line for a decade. I've had former employees, client vendors, even a state employee come to me anonymously. But no one ever had hard documentation. Just whispers. Your file completes the circle." I swallowed hard. "You've been waiting for someone like me." She looked me dead in the eye. "No, I've been waiting for you." That stopped me cold. She laid out 3 tabs on her screen. Vendor manipulation from 2020. A compliance officer from HR who resigned quietly in 2021. A redacted internal memo from a regulatory audit review. Each source pointed to unethical cost-saving practices Olamed had quietly implemented over time, but they were disjointed, circumstantial, until now. "I've been watching," Dana said. "You were the last clean signature on every policy change until they pushed you out. That tells me they knew you wouldn't sign off on this." "So what now?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "Now, we take this private, we gather, we verify. Then we go public. Class action if we have the bodies. Whistleblower protection if we need cover." She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a prepaid phone and a flash drive. "Don't use your cell. Don't access anything from home. And Grace," her eyes narrowed, "not cruel but razor sharp. If you do this, there's no unringing the bell." I looked down at the envelope. then at the PDF in my own bag. And I nodded. Cold, clear, ready. I never imagined I'd be operating like a spy at 52 years old, but that's exactly what the next few days felt like. Dana's prepaid phone sat heavy in my purse, like it was ticking. I only used it from the public library, where the Wi-Fi was spotty but anonymous. I parked 4 blocks away and wore sunglasses when I walked in, not because I thought someone would recognize me, but because secrecy, once it settled in your bones, changed how you moved through the world. My first task was to catalog everything I still had. Emails, policy memos, red-line drafts of internal guidelines. Most of it came from backups I'd exported during my last compliance review. It had been standard procedure back then, something I did on instinct to make audit prep easier. I never imagined those files would become the foundation of a case that could shake Olamed to its core. Dana didn't waste time. She created a private shared vault, heavily encrypted, where I uploaded everything in carefully labeled folders. 2022, policy adjustments, Q3 reimbursement reviews, Mitchell threads, silent approvals, no compliance signature. One folder was labeled ghost signatures, approvals that bore my digital ID, even though I'd never seen the documents before. That's when the determination in my gut sharpened into something else. This wasn't just fraud, it was identity theft of my professional name, my credibility. Dana worked like a machine. By the 3rd day, she'd already reached out to 4 former employees who had either quit quietly or were forced out after raising similar concerns. One of them, Marcus Taylor, used to handle internal audits. I hadn't seen him since he disappeared in 2020 with no explanation. People whispered he'd had a breakdown. Turns out, he'd been asked to revise his reports, to downplay expense anomalies in vendor payments. When he refused, HR suddenly discovered performance issues on his file. He walked away with a broken contract and a shredded reputation. Marcus remembered me. "You were the only one who ever asked for original source data," he said during a Zoom call Dana arranged. "I always thought you were just too clean for that place." Another woman, Charlene Vu, had been a junior analyst in the risk division. She showed Dana emails where she questioned claim denial patterns in employee insurance requests. 2 weeks later, she was reassigned to reception. "They didn't fire me," she said. "They just made me irrelevant." Each conversation confirmed what I had suspected. My firing wasn't an isolated act. It was part of a pattern, cutting out the people who noticed too much. Then came the message that shifted everything. Dana received it late one night, an anonymous encrypted email from someone still inside the company. The sender had used a fake name, Black Box. The email contained a single PDF file, labeled Internal Reimbursement Analysis, Q1 2025. I'll never forget the silence on the phone as Dana scrolled through it. Then she said, This is worse than what we thought." The document laid it out in brutal clarity. The number of denied claims had increased by 38% over the last quarter. Most were medical services. Employees had been told were covered. Mental health counseling, maternity-related prescriptions, cancer screening follow-ups. The system had been programmed to auto-reject certain codes without alerting HR or patients directly. No appeals, no trace, just silent denials. At the bottom of the file was a note in italics. Internal flag. Do not report denials in monthly summaries unless queried by audit. They weren't just hiding the truth. They were burying it, and someone inside was finally starting to dig. Dana's voice came through the phone again, low, clear, like a match being struck. "This just became a war." I didn't flinch. I felt it too. It was no longer about me, not about revenge, not about getting my name back. This was about the hundreds of people still sitting in that office, still trusting that the company had their back, still believing in coverage that didn't exist, and I was going to be the one to pull the thread. Until the whole thing unraveled. I hadn't realized how much noise paranoia could make. Every footstep behind me felt too close. Every phone call I didn't recognize made my stomach twist. Even my apartment, once my haven, now felt like it had eyes. It started 3 days after Dana received the black box email. I was walking back to my car after a quick grocery run, bag of lemons in one hand, when I noticed the driver's side mirror had been folded in, deliberately. I knew because I never did that, and the windows looked cleaner than usual, like someone had wiped their prints off. I froze. My instincts screamed to get in and drive, but something felt off. I scanned the parking lot, empty except for a beat-up white truck idling near the exit. The windows were tinted too dark to see the driver. I looked away quickly, pretending not to notice. Inside the car, everything looked the same. The radio presets were mine. The seat was in my position. But when I popped the trunk to load my groceries, I saw it, my briefcase. I kept it in the trunk out of habit, a relic of my old office life. It hadn't been touched in weeks, until now. The zipper was open. Files were splayed slightly, not missing, just disturbed. Whoever it was hadn't stolen anything. They were sending a message. I slammed the trunk shut and drove straight home, hands trembling on the wheel, every red light feeling like an ambush point. I double-locked my apartment door and checked the windows 3 times before I allowed myself to sit down. That night, it got worse. At 11:28 p.m., I received a text from an unknown number. No contact name, just a black bubble on the screen. "You don't know who you're messing with." I stared at it for a long time, too stunned to move. The words weren't vulgar, weren't explicit, but they carried weight. A chill settled in my chest, like a fog creeping into an unsealed room. I called Dana. She answered on the second ring. "You got something?" she asked. "No," I said. "Someone got to me." I told her everything, the car, the briefcase, the text. She went quiet for a beat. Then, "Grace, they're trying to shake you. If they thought they had anything real, you'd already have a lawsuit, not scare tactics." So what do I do? Exactly what you've been doing, but smarter, slower, less alone. The next day, I started parking in different spots. I used a rideshare service to reach the library. I kept my head down, sunglasses on, hoodie up. I felt like a fugitive. A part of me wondered if I was overreacting. That illusion shattered the moment someone I trusted turned away. Stephanie Chang had been a close colleague, another compliance analyst, sharp and principled. We'd eaten lunch together nearly every week for 5 years. She was one of the few people I thought might understand what I was doing. So I texted her, "Hey, Steph, can we talk? I just need someone to hear me out." No response for hours. Then finally, a single message came through. "Stop! This isn't worth it!" And immediately after, "This contact has been blocked." I stared at the screen, numb. It wasn't just fear now, it was isolation, one by one. The people who had once shared my coffee breaks and department meetings were closing their doors. Not because they disagreed, but because they were scared, too. I couldn't blame them. Not everyone has the stomach to stand in the dark, holding a match. But I wasn't going to back down, because someone had already tried to open the trunk of my life, and now I knew they were scared of what I might pull out. Fear doesn't vanish when you decide to speak up. It just becomes the cost of telling the truth. By the end of that week, I'd changed my routine so many times, I couldn't tell whether I was being cautious or just paranoid. I no longer sat at cafes. I carried a new prepaid phone. I even stopped wearing perfume. Somehow it felt too conspicuous. Like scent alone might make me traceable. But the silence was heavier than any threat. That's when Dana brought up Kellen Grant. "He's a journalist," she told me. "Long-form investigative, Not sensational. Broke the Denver VA fraud case in 2019. He's credible, discreet, and he'll protect your identity. My stomach nodded at the idea. Going to the press felt like stepping off a cliff. It was one thing to talk to Dana in encrypted chats, behind locked doors. It was another to let my story bleed into the public. They'll know it's me, I whispered. Dana nodded. Eventually, but not yet. Let's do this smart. She arranged a virtual meeting. Kellen's face appeared on my laptop screen. Calm. Mid-40s. Square jaw. Sleeves rolled up like he was ready to fight someone with facts alone. I understand your concerns, he said, his voice quiet, deliberate. I never publish without triple confirming every document, and I never reveal sources. You won't be the exception. We spent over an hour walking through the timeline, my role, the flagged policy changes, the thread, the fake approvals, and most importantly, the silent denials of employee insurance claims. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react with theatrics. He just took notes and asked the kind of questions only a journalist would know to ask. Do you still have access to the redacted quarterly summaries? No? But you had seen the originals? Yes. Could you recognize a doctored version? Without a doubt. He paused, then nodded once. Then let's start with the truth. 3 days later, the article went live. It wasn't front-page breaking news, but it landed with the weight of a sledgehammer. Senior Compliance Officer fired after warning of insurance fraud? By Kellen Grant. For the Ledger, an unnamed source from inside Olamed Solutions alleges that internal insurance policy changes, marked confidential, led to the silent denial of essential health services for dozens of employees. The piece was cautious, anonymous, and brilliantly written. My name wasn't in it, but my fingerprints were. The fallout was immediate. Dana's phone lit up that same afternoon. Calls from former employees, compliance watchdog groups, even a class action law firm. People were paying attention now. The silence was broken, but it was the email that came later that night that stopped me cold. It was from an anonymous Proton Mail account. No subject line, no name, just one line of text. You're right, I can back you up. L. My heart thudded. L? I dug through old records, searching emails, trying to place the initial, and then I found it. Leonard Granger, former VP of Legal Affairs at Olamed. He'd retired suddenly the year before. No one had ever said why. He'd always been cordial, distant but not cold. The kind of man who kept his ethics close and his words even closer. If this was him, it changed everything. Dana confirmed the email header was legitimate. He's using end-to-end encryption. That's not just support, that's a breadcrumb. What do we do? I asked. We wait, she said. He reached out. That means he's watching. When he's ready, he'll send more. Part of me wanted to scream. Waiting felt unbearable. But another part of me, one I hadn't felt since I was escorted out of Olamed, began to spark again. Courage doesn't always show up with a battle cry. Sometimes, it's just a quiet yes in the middle of your shaking. I didn't know if Leonard would come through, but I knew this. I wasn't alone anymore. And the wall of silence I thought would bury me? It was starting to crack. The headline changed everything. On a foggy Wednesday morning, I opened my laptop to check Kellen's follow-up. I nearly dropped my coffee. CNN had picked it up. Whistleblower exposes internal insurance fraud at Olamed Solutions. The subtitle hit harder. Exclusive documents suggest intentional benefit denials and retaliatory termination of compliance officer. Below that, screenshots of redacted emails, with every name blurred out except one. Mine. G. Thompson. Followed by the now infamous subject line, Policy Deviation, Legal Risk Concern. The article quoted excerpts from Kellen's piece in the Ledger, but expanded them. It detailed patterns of employee benefit denials, the disappearance of audit trails, and internal instructions to avoid triggering state reviews. They didn't say criminal yet, but it was implied. I sat frozen at my dining room table as texts started rolling in. From former coworkers, former friends, even my own sister, who never took much interest in my job before. Is this real? Grace? Is this you? You're on the front page of Google News. Dana called 15 minutes later, her voice calm as ever, but with a faint edge of triumph. They're panicking, she said. SEC just opened a preliminary inquiry. Office of Employee Benefits is reviewing their last 3 quarters. I didn't smile. Not exactly. But something deeper settled in me. A stillness. Not gloating. Not revenge. Just cold satisfaction. The kind that comes when you know you were right all along. And no one can erase the truth anymore. The real surprise came later that day. I received a formal letter, delivered by courier to my apartment. No signature, but stamped by the legal firm representing Olamed. It was printed on heavy bond paper, as if weight could make its offer more respectable. I read the entire thing 3 times. The gist? A proposed settlement agreement offering $95,000 in exchange for my voluntary non-participation in further media engagement or legal proceedings. In other words, shut up, go away. It didn't say I was wrong. It didn't refute my claims. It just wanted me quiet. There was even a line in bold. This offer is not an admission of wrongdoing and is made solely in the interest of restoring company stability and employee morale. I almost laughed. This wasn't damage control. It was fear, legal, strategic, reputational fear. They knew what was coming, and they were trying to plug the leak with hush money. I called Dana and read her the letter. Standard tactic, she said. Soft gag order. They're buying time while they assess how deep the cut goes. What do you recommend? I asked. Her response came without hesitation. You already know the answer. And I did. Because the truth was never about money. It was about power and silence and the kind of rot that hides in places no one wants to clean. I thought back to all the years I spent defending Olamed's integrity in audits, in reports, in quiet one-on-one meetings with employees afraid they'd lost coverage for their child's therapy sessions or their spouse's cancer treatments. I gave everything to protect that system, believing in it, even when it creaked under corporate weight. Now they were offering me $95,000 to pretend it never happened, as if the bruises could be unbruised, as if the lies could be unlearned. Later that evening, I got a text from Marcus Taylor, the former auditor Dana had reconnected with. Saw the news. I'm proud of you. They tried to break you, but you held the line. P.S. Mitchell's stepping down. Medical leave. Apparently. That one made me pause. Mitchell, the man who smiled through firings, who told me I was too expensive, was suddenly gone. Dana confirmed it the next morning. They're calling it a personal health sabbatical, but internally, the board's removing him quietly. He's toxic now. I stared at my ceiling for a long time that night. I didn't feel victorious, not exactly, but I felt unburdened. They tried to erase me. Now their CEO was the one vanishing, into the same silence they once forced on me. And as I turned out the light, I thought of the offer sitting in my desk drawer, still unopened, still unsigned. They wanted my silence, but I had learned how to speak. By Friday, the email came through Dana's secure channel. One line of text, brief and sterile. The board is open to alternative resolutions. Please propose terms for consideration. They didn't want to offer me silence anymore. Now they wanted my terms. I sat with that sentence for nearly an hour, staring at it like it was an ancient riddle. 2 months ago, they threw me out like I was a spreadsheet error, just a line item too costly to justify. Now the board of directors wanted to resolve things, not because they saw the light, but because they'd started to see the loss. The class action suit had gathered over 100 signatures. 2 federal regulators were circling. Shareholders were fuming. Stock had dipped 9% in a week. And Mitchell's medical sabbatical had become an industry punchline. And there I was, sitting in my apartment, holding all the leverage they never thought I'd live long enough to touch. Dana asked me once, early on, "What do you want when this is over?" At the time, I didn't have an answer. Now I did. My counteroffer was typed in 14-point calibri. Black and bold, I decline the financial settlement. In lieu of payment, I propose appointment to a newly established position, lead ethics supervisor. The role will carry full oversight of internal policy drafts, insurance regulations, and benefit approvals. It will report directly to the board, not to executive leadership. The appointment will be public, irrevocable for 3 years. Starting compensation, $720 per hour. The silence from their side lasted 2 days. On the 3rd, Dana received a response. It was a scanned board memo. Some laughed. One referred to it as a publicity stunt. Another questioned my motives, suggesting I was trying to humiliate the company. But one director, a woman named Janet Grayson, circled back later that evening. She asked for a private call. I answered. Her tone was clipped but sincere. "We've reviewed your terms," she said. "The board recognizes the optics and the necessity. If we appoint you, we expect transparency, integrity, and, frankly, damage control." "I'm not coming in to protect you," I said. "I'm coming in to protect the people you failed." To my surprise, she said, "That's exactly why it has to be you." The announcement went public 5 days later. Olamed appoints Grace Thompson as lead ethics supervisor amid ongoing inquiry. I didn't smile when I saw it trending, but I printed it and folded it into a leather folder, next to my termination notice. A little symmetry, a little justice. The first day back was strange. The lobby was the same marble floors, same glass entry doors, but the air was different, stiffer, tighter. Security gave me a new badge. "Red tier," they said. "Direct board clearance." I nodded, clipped it to my blazer, and entered the same building that once shoved me out in 30 minutes flat. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than I remembered. When the doors opened, I stepped into the newly constructed ethics office, just a corner suite with a long table, 3 file cabinets, and a view of the city. It didn't need to be grand. It just needed to exist. That afternoon, as I reviewed my first stack of policy revisions, pages soaked in legalese and spin, I saw a familiar face step into the elevator with me on the way down. Harold Langston, one of the senior board members, gray suit, narrow glasses. He'd always voted with Mitchell. He didn't say anything at first, just glanced at my badge, then at the file in my hand. When the doors closed, he cleared his throat and said quietly, "We should have listened to you years ago." I didn't respond. Some victories don't need applause. But deep down, I filed the words away like everything else. Evidence, confirmation, closure. That night, as I closed the blinds in my apartment, I thought of how many times I'd been told to be quiet, told I was overreacting, too particular, too by the book. And now I was the one holding the red pen, and the people who once erased me would now answer to me. My new contract was 12 pages long. I read every word twice, redlined 3 clauses, and insisted on a handwritten addendum at the end. All policy changes must be reviewed by Grace Thompson prior to executive approval. No exceptions. They signed it without comment. That's the thing about power. It shifts silently. No drum roll. No ceremony. One day, you're walking out of the building with your life in a cardboard box. The next, you're back, wearing a badge with platinum security clearance and charging $720 an hour. I didn't choose the number to be poetic. I chose it to be exact. That was the amount they once called unsustainable. Now it was the fee they paid to clean up the mess they made without me. My title, Lead Ethics Supervisor, External Oversight Division. Not an employee, not on payroll. I wasn't part of the machine anymore. I was the person who audited the machine, who approved every major policy update, and who could veto compliance changes with a single signature. The office they gave me was sharp, floor-to-ceiling glass, high-backed leather chair, a discreet wall safe. I didn't decorate, no plants, no photo frames, just a locked drawer with a copy of my termination letter, and the offer they had once sent to shut me up. I kept them both there as reminders. On my first full day back, I arrived early. The halls were quiet, the energy still off-kilter from the recent chaos. Some employees nodded politely, eyes cautious. A few whispered when I passed. I didn't mind. Reputation is a loud companion. At 9:15 a.m., a courier dropped off my first set of review documents, 4 binders, and a slim envelope marked Priority Review, Benefits Realignment. I flipped it open. My fingers stilled at the second page. It was Mitchell's name, still imprinted in the metadata. This was one of the last policy updates he had personally signed before stepping down. The document outlined a revised benefits tier, including a provision to optimize outpatient mental health coverage through claim realignment. I knew what that meant. I'd seen versions of this tactic before. It was the same soft fraud they'd tried to push past me 6 months before firing me, carefully disguised, dressed in neutral language. But I knew better. They thought I'd stamp it now that I had a title. I took out my red pen and wrote 3 words across the top page. Rejected, in violation. Then I slid it back into the courier envelope and sent it upstairs. 2 hours later, I received a 1-line email from Janet Grayson, the board member who had backed my appointment. "We stand by your call. Thank you." That was it. No debate, no pushback. That moment, simple as it was, tasted colder and sweeter than any apology they could have offered. At lunch, I ate alone in the rooftop cafeteria. Same food, different perspective. The server smiled at me like he recognized something in my face, but couldn't quite place it. As I sipped coffee, I noticed a familiar figure standing near the terrace doors. Helen, the receptionist who used to greet me with a smile every morning back when I was still just grace from compliance. She walked over slowly, cautiously. "I read the articles," she said quietly. "I wanted to say, I'm glad you came back." I nodded. "Me too." She hesitated. "Does it feel different?" I paused, considering the question. The skyline behind her shimmered with winter light. "It feels clear," I said, like standing in a room where the lies finally left. That afternoon, I signed off on a new code of ethics draft, implemented a permanent third-party audit system, and submitted a quarterly training requirement that would be mandatory for all executives, including board members. No one challenged it. No one even dared to suggest edits. Funny how quickly too expensive becomes essential when the alternative is a public collapse. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, blazer off, shirt sleeves rolled, not victorious, not angry, just steady. I thought of Mitchell, of the email that ended my career, and the policy he tried to sneak through the cracks. And now, here I was, holding the seal, controlling the ink. They once fired me over $720 a month. Now they paid me $720 an hour to protect them from themselves, not because they trusted me, but because they knew no one else could. And that was enough. The faces had changed, but the furniture stayed the same. The lobby plants were greener now. There was ambient music playing, light jazz, maybe to ease tension. The new receptionist wore the kind of soft pastel blazer that human resources like to call approachable. There were even brochures on the front desk that read, "We hear you, we value you," but under the glass. The foundation hadn't shifted as much as it pretended to. New leadership had stepped in. A freshly hired COO from a tech company in Seattle, a legal affairs director from overseas with impressive credentials and a spotless record. They brought with them the right words: transparency, accountability, reform. And yet, when I reviewed the first 10 policy proposals on my desk that month, I could still see the fingerprints of the old system smudging the corners. Soft loopholes, vague clauses, benefits phrased in ways that made denials look like accidents. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply circled what mattered in red, attached a 3-line memo that read, "Non-compliant, needs clarification," and sent it back. Within weeks, they stopped testing the boundaries. I spent most of my days in silence, reading, marking, adjusting. There was something oddly meditative about it, like rebuilding a broken engine with quiet precision. I didn't make speeches. I didn't issue press releases. I just did the work. Some staff avoided me at first. Maybe they were uncomfortable. Maybe they didn't know what to say to the woman who'd gone from compliance officer to whistleblower to executive auditor. Or maybe they feared I was here to clean house. But over time, things softened. I caught people nodding in meetings when I raised points. Younger employees started asking questions instead of retreating. And once in a while, someone would quietly slip a printed email onto my desk with a yellow sticky note. "I don't know if this is wrong, but it feels off." Those notes meant more than applause. They meant people were starting to notice for themselves. On a Thursday afternoon, I was reviewing a proposal for a new wellness reimbursement plan, pretty straightforward, when someone knocked on the open door of my office. It was a young man, no older than 22, with a lanyard marked intern and a backpack too big for his frame. His hands were tucked nervously into his sleeves. "Hi," he said, voice cracking slightly. "I'm Marcus. I'm shadowing Beth from legal this week. She said I could ask questions, if that's okay?" I leaned back. "Of course." He stepped inside, paused, then asked the question like it had been sitting in his mouth for days. "Is it true you almost brought the company down?" The room held still for a moment. I set down my pen. And then I smiled. Not cold, not smug, just a soft curve of the mouth that said more than any press article ever could. "No," I replied. "I just made them clean it up." Marcus blinked. Then, slowly, he nodded. It wasn't the answer he expected, but it was one he'd remember. That evening, I walked the floors I hadn't visited in months. The break room still smelled like burnt coffee. The third-floor printer still jammed if you didn't hit the tray just right. I watched a new generation of employees typing emails, sipping from company mugs, debating insurance terms in hushed tones. They didn't know the full story, not really, just pieces, headlines, rumors. But they were living in a version of the company that was better than what came before. Not perfect, but better. Because someone once refused to stay quiet. On my way back to my office, I passed a familiar hallway, narrow, windowless, lined with old framed awards. At the end stood the elevator, where I'd once been escorted out. Badge deactivated mid-ride, cardboard box in hand. I stopped. The elevator dinged open, empty. This time, I didn't step in. Instead, I turned around and walked the long way back, through the heart of the office, past the people who now watched me, not with suspicion, but with curiosity, respect, even gratitude, not because I yelled, but because I stayed. And quietly, without permission, I changed everything. The room looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe because I was sitting at the head of the table now. Maybe because time has a way of shrinking even the most intimidating places once you stop fearing them. This was the same conference room where, not long ago, I had been handed my walking papers, told, in the most sterile of terms, that I was too expensive to retain, no plaque, no handshake, no thank you for 21 years of service. Now, I was back, not as an employee, as the one who approved every policy before it ever left this room. The meeting had been called to discuss a complete overhaul of Olamed's internal ethics and benefits infrastructure. The fallout from the investigation had demanded visible change, and the board wanted a formal presentation on reforms, led by me. Janet Grayson sat at my left, legal counsel to my right, around the table, faces I recognized from old company newsletters and board memos, though most of them had never looked at me directly before. Today, no one could avoid my gaze. A projector hummed softly. A slide deck displayed the new compliance protocols I had authored, clear, enforceable, and unapologetic. When I finished speaking, the room went quiet, not with resistance, but respect, the kind of silence that comes when people know there's no room left for doubt. Then the door opened. I heard the footsteps before I saw him. Mitchell, hair grayer, suit looser, face thinner. The once confident CEO who had signed off on my removal now walked into the room as a consulting advisor. That was the official title. What it really meant was expendable expert. Someone called in when optics mattered more than power. He didn't look at me at first. He took a seat near the end of the table, away from the board. No papers, no laptop, just an old-fashioned notepad. And a pen he never once clicked. It was Janet who addressed him. "Mitchell, we appreciate your historical insight on the insurance frameworks, but today's meeting is led by Grace Thompson. She holds oversight authority on all compliance revisions." I turned my head, meeting his eyes for the first time in nearly a year. He nodded. I nodded back. That was all. There were no apologies, no excuses, just a shared understanding. The balance of power had shifted, and it wasn't shifting back. Later, after the meeting adjourned, I stayed behind to gather my materials. A few board members stopped to shake my hand. One of them, a younger man I hadn't met before, smiled and said, "You're the reason I joined the ethics committee. We needed someone like you 10 years ago." I thanked him, quietly, outside, in the corridor. I passed the old HR office. The door had a new nameplate. A young woman was inside, speaking to someone who looked worried, maybe new. She reminded me of myself, the version of me who believed doing the right thing was enough to protect you. I kept walking, at home that evening. I sat at my kitchen counter with a glass of red wine and opened the drawer where I kept the documents that changed everything. My original termination notice, the first email I flagged, the hush money offer, and my signed contract as lead ethics supervisor. Each paper had its own weight. Each one told a part of the story. I closed the drawer. I didn't need to look at them anymore. A week later, a new intern named Haley stopped by my office with a question about reimbursement protocols. She looked nervous, clutching a notebook like it was a life raft. I explained the section she was asking about, then paused and asked, "How are you finding the team so far?" She smiled. "Honestly, it feels safe here. Everyone says the ethics division has teeth now." I nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of my mouth. Then I saw the note on her notebook. It read, "Be the one who says something." I didn't ask where she got it. I already knew. On my last meeting of the month, I stood once more at the head of the same conference table, holding a finalized report with 12 new safeguards implemented under my leadership. No one questioned it. No one dared. Because I was no longer the woman they could ignore. I was the woman they reported to. And as I signed the last page, I thought of every moment they tried to erase me, the dismissal, the silence, the empty elevator ride, and I said, quietly, as if to the empty seat Mitchell once occupied, they erased me for $720. Now they pay me 10 times that, to make sure no one ever gets erased again.